The US gas prices jumped from about $2.98 to $4 plus per gallon in about a month. And in some places like California, prices are near $5 to $6 per gallon. Though shocking, this is not our first rodeo. Remember, sometime in spring of 2022, you pulled in, you were not really paying attention, and then you looked at the number on the pump and you actually paused and did the math twice. You looked around like maybe someone else was seeing what you were seeing, and then you paid it, drove off, and tried not to think about it too hard. That was 6 weeks after Russia invaded Ukraine, and that took months to come down and actually remained higher than pre-war levels. Now you are hearing about Iran, and now the question is whether this time you are going to absorb the impact again or get ahead of it. That is what we are doing today. My name is Mila, and I'm obsessed with the small moves and hidden nuances that build real wealth. Today we are covering exactly how this conflict can affect your money, even from thousands of miles away. And the protection framework you need to have in place right now. Here's all the context you need. And I am going to keep this short because this is not a news channel. The conflict involving Iran has raised serious concerns around energy supply routes in the Middle East, specifically the Strait of Hormuz, which is one of the most critical oil transit points in the world. Roughly 20% of the global oil supply moves through that strait. When that region becomes unstable, energy markets feel it immediately. And when energy markets feel it, the ripple moves outward, through fuel costs, through transportation, through supply chains. You do not need to understand oil futures or global shipping logistics for this to affect you. You just need to be someone who buys things. And that is enough. Here is the one idea I want you to carry through everything we cover today. You cannot control the war. You cannot control what happens in any region or how markets respond, or what decisions get made in rooms you will never be in. But you can control how exposed your money is to all of it. Before we move to the protection framework, let's look at where you will feel the effect most. There are 4 places where conflict like this tends to hit first: your gas tank, your grocery bill, your electricity bill, and your travel plans. First, your gas tank. And here's the thing. What you are feeling right now may not be the ceiling. If this conflict escalates, if the Strait of Hormuz gets disrupted, if supply gets squeezed further, analysts are already talking about prices that could go significantly higher from where they were just months ago. Some markets are already close. For a lot of households, that is not just uncomfortable. That is the difference between a budget that works and one that does not. Because gas is not an annual expense you can plan around. It hits you every single week because you still have to get to work, still have to run your life. And because you are filling up weekly, $1 more per gallon across several fill-ups a month is real money. Next, your grocery bill. This one is less obvious, but just as real. Energy runs through almost every step of getting food to your table. The trucks that move goods across the country, the warehouses, the packaging, the distribution. When energy prices go up, every one of those steps gets more expensive. And that cost moves down the line until it lands with you at the checkout. You might barely drive. You might not own a car. But if you eat, and you do, this has already reached you. Next, your electricity bill. This is the one people forget about. A significant portion of electricity in this country is still generated using natural gas. When gas prices rise, electricity generation costs rise with them, and your bill follows. So even if you never leave the house, never fill up a tank, never order a delivery, you are still connected to this through the outlet in your wall. Next, your travel plans. When energy prices rise, flights get more expensive. Fuel is one of the biggest operating costs airlines carry. And when that cost goes up, it gets passed directly to you. Through fares, through fees, through routes becoming less available. If you have been thinking about booking something, the price you're looking at today is likely not the price you will be looking at in a few weeks. So now you can see where it hits. But here's the question worth sitting with. How long does this last? Because that changes everything about how seriously you need to take what we are about to cover. If this blows over in a few weeks, okay. You feel some pressure, you tighten up a little, things normalize. But if this conflict drags on, and there is a real chance it does, then what started as a spike in gas prices becomes something that works its way into the broader economy. And that is a completely different situation. Here is how that actually happens. When energy prices rise and stay there, inflation gets stuck. It stops coming down the way everyone was hoping it would. And when inflation stays high, the Federal Reserve has a problem. Because their main tool for fighting inflation is keeping interest rates high. So instead of cutting rates the way people have been waiting for them to, they hold. Or in a more serious scenario, they raise rates again. Now, what does that actually mean for your life? If you have a variable rate mortgage, your monthly payment can go up. Not in some distant hypothetical future, based on decisions being made right now in direct response to what this conflict is doing to prices. If you are carrying a credit card balance, you are paying more interest on it every single month it stays there. If you are planning to buy a home this year, higher borrowing costs mean either paying significantly more per month for the same house or rethinking what you can actually afford. And underneath all of that is something quieter. When inflation stays elevated, your income starts doing less. Not because your salary dropped, because everything around it got more expensive and did not come back down. You do not feel it all at once. You just notice one day that things are tighter than they used to be, and you cannot quite put your finger on when that changed. That is what a sustained disruption does, and that is why the window to get ahead of this matters. Now, before we get into exactly what to do, I want to say one thing first. Do not let fear drive this, because when people hear everything we just covered, the temptation is to either do too much or do nothing at all. And some people panic spend, bulk buying things they do not need yet, and draining the very cushion they are going to need later. Some people make big impulsive money moves, pulling out of investments, taking on debt, making purchases they have been putting off because they are convinced prices are about to get so much worse. And some people just go completely still and tell themselves they will figure it out later. None of that is going to help you. What actually helps you is a clear, calm, specific plan. And that is exactly what we are building right now. So here is your protection framework. 5 things that have proven to work during every major economic disruption we have seen. And right now, with this conflict showing no signs of slowing down, they matter more than ever. The first is knowing your financial margin. And all that means is this: after everything that must be paid is paid, what is actually left? Your rent or mortgage, your utilities, your minimum debt payments, your non-negotiable essentials. What survives after all of that is your financial margin. That number is your real protection during a period like this. Not your income, not your savings rate, that gap. And the first thing to do right now is actually know it. Not roughly. Actually know it. Here is what that looks like in real numbers. Say you take home $4,500 a month. Your rent is $1,600. Car payment $350. Utilities $200. Minimum debt payments $250. Groceries $500. Gas $250. Phone and subscriptions $150. That is $3,300 gone before you have made a single flexible decision. Your financial margin is $1,200. Now, gas goes up another $50 a month. Groceries climb another $70. Electricity bill creeps up $30. That is $150 of your $1,200 gone without you changing anything. Your margin just went from $1,200 to $1,050. Now imagine your margin was not $1,200. Imagine it was $300. That same $150 hit does not just tighten things, it breaks them. That is when the credit card comes out. That is when the stress starts. That is when one economic disruption becomes a personal financial crisis. That is why this number matters more than almost anything else right now. Know it. Because if it is thin, widening it is your most urgent priority before this gets worse. The second is reducing your exposure. And this is also how you start widening that financial margin we just talked about. Think back to the 4 places this conflict hits your money: your gas, your groceries, your electricity, and your travel. Those are not just the problem areas, they are also your biggest opportunity to take back control right now. Because every dollar you recover from those categories goes straight back into your margin. Gas first. Look at your driving habits honestly. Trips that could be combined into one. Errands that could be batched so you are not making 4 separate runs when one would do. Carpooling if that is realistic for your situation. Even cutting 2 or 3 fill-ups a month at current prices. And remember, current prices may not be the ceiling, is meaningful money back in your pocket every single month. Your groceries. This is where most households have more flexibility than they realize. Meal planning before you shop so you are not buying things that sit in the fridge and get thrown out. Cutting back on convenience food. The pre-cut, pre-packaged, pre-seasoned versions of things that cost 2 or 3 times more than the basic version. Reducing delivery orders because every single delivery order you place right now has energy costs baked into every layer of it. The fee, the service charge, the tip, all of it. Your electricity. This one feels small until you actually look at your bill. Turning things off properly instead of leaving them on standby. Being deliberate about heating and cooling rather than just defaulting to whatever is comfortable. Running heavy appliances like washing machines and dishwashers during off-peak hours, where your provider offers lower rates. None of these things are dramatic. But in an environment where your electricity bill is already climbing because of gas prices, every reduction matters. Your travel. If you have trips coming up, now is the time to know exactly what flexibility you have built into those bookings. Not necessarily to cancel, but to understand what your options are if prices shift further. And if you are thinking about booking something new, factor in that flight prices are likely to keep moving in one direction for the foreseeable future. That does not mean do not travel. It means travel with eyes open and budget accordingly. You are not eliminating everything. You are reducing your surface area, making your budget a smaller target for what is still coming. The third is strengthening your emergency cushion. And here is how to think about this during a period like this one. An emergency fund is not just for job loss. Most people think of it that way. Something sitting there for a worst-case scenario that may never come. But what an emergency cushion actually does during an economic disruption is change the quality of every single financial decision you make while that disruption is happening. Here is what that means in real terms. Say your car needs a repair, and it costs $800. If you have nothing set aside, that $800 goes on a credit card at 22% interest. Now, you are not just dealing with the repair, you are paying for it for months after. But if you have even a small cushion sitting there, that $800 gets handled and it is done. No interest, no lingering cost, no debt that outlasts the original problem. That is what cash does during a period like this. It stops temporary problems from becoming permanent ones. Now, here is what you should actually be aiming for. The standard guidance from financial experts is 3 months of essential expenses held in cash, not invested, not tied up somewhere, liquid and available. So if your essential monthly expenses, rent, utilities, food, transport, minimum debt payments, total $3,000 a month, your target is $9,000 sitting in an accessible account. But here is the realistic version for right now. If you are not there yet, your immediate target is 1 month of essentials. Just one, because that single month of coverage changes everything. Your stress level, your decision quality, your ability to absorb a price shock without immediately reaching for debt. 1 month first, then build toward 3. And if you are starting from 0 right now, that is okay. The goal this week is not to hit the target overnight. The goal is to add something. $50, $100, whatever is honest for your situation right now. Because the direction matters as much as the amount. Every dollar you add is a dollar that gives you options instead of forcing your hand when the next unexpected cost hits. And in an environment where prices are already moving and could go higher, unexpected costs are not a question of if, they are a question of when. The fourth is avoiding new, high-interest debt. And this is the one that can turn a temporary economic disruption into a permanent financial problem. So stay with me here because the numbers on this are genuinely sobering. When prices rise and your budget gets squeezed, the temptation is to bridge the gap with a credit card. It feels like a reasonable short-term solution. You get through the month, things hopefully settle, and you pay it back later. But here is what actually happens. Say you put $1,500 on a credit card at 22% interest, which is around the current average. You make the minimum payment every month. That $1,500 takes over 6 years to pay off and costs you an additional $1,100 in interest alone. You borrowed $1,500 to get through a rough patch and ended up paying $2,600 for it. Now multiply that across a few months of pressure. $2,000 here, $800 there. A car repair you could not cover because the cushion was not there yet. Suddenly you are carrying $4,000 or $5,000 in high-interest debt, and the monthly minimum payments are eating directly into the financial margin we talked about in part 1, which means less breathing room, which means more pressure, which means more likelihood of reaching for the card again. That is the debt trap, and it does not announce itself. It builds quietly while you are just trying to get through each month. So the rule during a period like this is simple. Before the credit card comes out, go back to part 2. Find the expense to cut first. Reduce the exposure first. Dip into the emergency cushion if you have one before adding to high-interest debt. Because debt at 22% interest in an environment where everything is already more expensive is one of the most expensive decisions you can make when the economy is not stable. The fifth is keeping your plan flexible. And this one is less about a specific number and more about understanding something important about how your brain works under pressure. Because the research on this is genuinely fascinating. And once you understand it, you will never make this mistake the same way again. Here is what happens psychologically when economic uncertainty hits. Your brain does something very predictable. It starts looking for control, and the way it tries to find control is by making decisions. Signing things, committing to things, locking things in. Because decisiveness feels like stability when everything around you feels unstable. It feels like you are doing something, taking charge, getting ahead of it. But here's what the research actually shows. Princeton and Harvard researchers found that when people feel financially squeezed, something remarkable happens to their thinking. Their cognitive bandwidth literally narrows. The mental space available for long-term planning, for weighing consequences, for thinking clearly about the future, it shrinks. Not because they are not smart, because financial pressure consumes mental resources the same way running too many applications drains a phone battery. The studies showed that financial worry alone consumed the cognitive equivalent of a 13-point IQ drop. 13 points. Just from the stress of feeling financially uncertain. And that is exactly the moment, when your thinking is narrowest, that you are most likely to make a large, rigid commitment trying to feel in control. There is also something called present bias that makes this worse. It is a well-documented psychological tendency where we consistently overvalue what feels good right now versus what protects us later. So, when you are sitting in the middle of economic uncertainty and someone offers you a new lease, a long-term contract, a deal that feels urgent, the relief of saying yes and feeling decisive right now feels more real and more immediate than the abstract risk of being locked in 6 months from now when the situation may look completely different. Your brain trades future flexibility for present comfort, every time, unless you know it is happening. And then there is loss aversion. Decades of research, most famously from psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky, found that people feel losses about twice as powerfully as equivalent gains, which means the fear of missing out on something, a price, a deal, a window you think is closing, feels genuinely more painful than the risk of overcommitting. So you commit, and then the window the economy gave you to adjust quietly closes behind you. Here is what that looks like in real life. Say you have been thinking about getting a new car for a while. Your current one is fine, not perfect, but it runs. And then the economic uncertainty hits, and something in you thinks, I should just do this now before things get worse, before prices go up more, before my situation changes. And a dealer offers you a lease that feels manageable, $450 a month. You sign it. Now you are locked in for 3 years. $450 a month coming out of your budget every single month, regardless of what happens to gas prices, regardless of what happens to your income, regardless of what this conflict does to the broader economy over the next 12 to 18 months. That is a fixed obligation sitting on top of a financial margin that is already under pressure, and the car you already had still ran. That decision felt like control in the moment. It felt decisive and forward-moving. But what it actually did was reduce your options at exactly the moment you needed more of them. That is present bias and loss aversion working together in real time. And it happens to smart and capable people every single day, especially during periods of uncertainty when the urge to feel in control is at its strongest. So, before you sign anything or take on any new recurring expense during a period like this, pause, just long enough to ask one question. If this economic situation gets meaningfully worse over the next 6 months, does this decision give me more flexibility or less? If the answer is less, wait. Every new commitment you take on right now is a reduction in your options. And options, the ability to adjust, redirect, and respond, are exactly what you need more of right now, not less. You do not need a perfect plan. You need one you can actually move inside of. Okay, so now you have the framework. You understand your financial margin, where your exposure is, what your cushion should look like. Why debt is dangerous right now, and why flexibility is your most important asset in an environment like this one. But awareness without action is just expensive knowledge. So now, let us talk about some quick wins. Things you can do almost immediately to widen your financial margin. Because the wider it is going into this, the more protected you are if things get worse. The first is looking at whether you can bring in additional income. And I want to be clear about how to think about this. This is not about building a business or launching a side hustle from scratch. This is about one simple question. Is there anything you can do in the next few weeks to bring in extra money temporarily while this uncertainty is active? That could be picking up extra shifts if your job allows it, offering a skill you already have, tutoring, bookkeeping, writing, designing, cooking, fixing things, to people in your immediate network, selling things you already own and do not use, renting out a space, a car, equipment. The bar here is not high. Even an extra $200 to $300 a month during a period like this goes directly into your margin and changes what you can absorb. The households that come through economic disruptions in the strongest position are rarely the ones who cut the most. They are the ones who protected their income and found small ways to add to it while everyone else was just trying to survive on what they already had. The second is reviewing and negotiating your fixed bills. This is money hiding in plain sight, and most people never go looking for it. Your insurance, car, renters, home, is worth a call. Rates change. Competitors offer better deals. Loyalty does not always pay in insurance, and a 30-minute call to shop your policy or negotiate your current rate can save you hundreds of dollars a year. That is immediate margin with zero lifestyle change. Your internet and phone bills are the same. Call your provider. Tell them you are reviewing your expenses and looking at competitors. More often than not, they have a retention offer that never appears on the website. People who never call pay more than people who do. It is that straightforward. Your subscriptions are worth a full audit too, not just the ones you remember. The ones you forgot about? Pull your bank statement and look at every recurring charge. The streaming service you signed up for during a free trial. The app you downloaded once. The membership that auto-renewed. In a period of economic uncertainty, every dollar of unnecessary fixed spending is a dollar that should be in your margin instead. The third is checking what relief or assistance is available to you. This is the one most people skip because they assume it does not apply to them. But during periods of economic disruption, there are often programs specifically designed to help households absorb the pressure. And they are frequently underused because people either do not know they exist or do not think they qualify. The Low-Income Home Energy Assistance Program helps households with energy costs and has income thresholds that are broader than most people expect. Many utility companies have hardship programs or payment plans that are not advertised prominently, but are available if you ask. Some states have specific relief programs that activate during periods of elevated energy prices. The point is not that every one of these applies to you. The point is that you should know before you assume they do not. Because leaving available assistance unclaimed while putting pressure on a credit card is one of the most expensive assumptions you can make during a period like this. The fourth is making sure your emergency cushion is actually working for you while it sits there. If your emergency savings are sitting in a standard bank account earning close to zero interest, they are losing value in real terms every single day that inflation stays elevated. And in an environment like this one, that is not a small thing. A high-yield savings account, which you can open online in most cases in under 10 minutes, currently offers somewhere between 4 and 5% annual interest, depending on the provider. On a $5,000 emergency cushion, that is $200 to $250 a year in interest you are currently leaving on the table if your money is sitting in a standard account. That is not investing. That is not risk. That is just making sure the money you are already setting aside is working as hard as it possibly can while you are not touching it. In a period of economic uncertainty, that difference compounds faster than people realize. The fifth is protecting yourself from emotional financial decisions driven by headlines. We covered this briefly in the What Not to Do section, but it deserves its own action point here, because this is arguably the most expensive mistake people make during a period like this. And it is the most invisible one. When uncertainty is high and headlines are loud, your financial decision-making is under attack from every direction. Every news update, every social media post, every conversation about what is happening carries an emotional charge that influences how you think about your money. And the research is clear. Emotionally activated financial decisions consistently underperform calm, deliberate ones. So, here's the practical version of this. Create a simple rule for yourself during this period. No significant financial decision. Nothing above a threshold you set yourself. Whether that is $200 or $500, gets made within 24 hours of consuming news about this conflict. Give yourself a cooling off period. Not because the news is wrong, because your brain needs time to separate the emotional response from the financial logic. That one rule alone could save you from decisions that feel urgent in the moment and costly for months afterward. Here is the bigger truth underneath everything we have covered today. This conflict, like every major disruption before it, does not treat every household the same way. It does not land evenly. The households with thin margins, no cushion, high debt, and locked-in obligations feel it first and feel it hardest. The households with breathing room, flexibility, and a little cash set aside absorb the same pressure and barely flinch. That gap is not luck. It is not income. It is structure. It is the decisions made before the disruption arrived. Quietly, undramatically, without anyone watching. The people who are least affected by moments like this are rarely the ones who earn the most. They are the ones who built the most resilient foundation before they needed it. You cannot go back and build it before this one started. But you are not too late to build it before it gets worse. And you are definitely not too late to build it before the next one. Because there will always be a next one. The world has always been uncertain. It always will be. The only variable you actually control is how prepared your household is when that uncertainty arrives. That is what today was really about. Not just Iran, not just gas prices, but the kind of financial foundation that does not panic when the world gets loud. That stays steady. That gives you options when everyone around you feels like they have none. You can build that. Starting this week. If this helped you today, please subscribe because this is exactly the kind of conversation we have on this channel every single week. And always remember, luxury is easier when your money is organized. I will see you in the next one, and I love you.